The world watched in stunned silence as the news broke across continents and time zones. Putin, the ever-confident Tsar, admitted a mistake. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from a leader known for his steely resolve. He should have invaded Ukraine sooner, he confessed. His words echoed through the halls of power and beyond, leaving many to ponder the implications. His words, laced with regret, revealed a chilling truth. It was not just a strategic error, but a deeply personal miscalculation. The invasion wasn't a reaction to NATO expansion or Ukrainian aggression. It was a calculated move, years in the making. It was a premeditated act, a long-held desire to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his, a vision of restoring a lost empire. This admission, however, did little to quell the storm brewing within Russia. The public's discontent was palpable. The war, once a distant spectacle on state-controlled television, had become an unwelcome guest in every Russian household. Families were now living the consequences. Thousands of body bags arriving from the front lines were impossible to ignore. The human cost was staggering. The economic prosperity promised by Putin was nowhere to be found, replaced by soaring inflation and empty store shelves. The reality was harsh and unforgiving. Putin, the master strategist, seemed to have miscalculated. His plans were unraveling before his eyes. His belief that Russia could withstand Western sanctions and Ukrainian resilience proved to be a fatal error. The economic fallout was severe. The once unthinkable was becoming a reality. The streets of Russia were filled with voices of dissent. Putin's iron grip on power was beginning to loosen. The future of his reign was now uncertain. For years, Putin enjoyed unwavering support, carefully cultivated through propaganda and fear, but the war in Ukraine chipped away at this facade. Whispers of dissent, once confined to hushed conversations in kitchens, were growing louder. Public opinion, once a monolith of pro-war sentiment, began to fragment. The official narrative, blaming the West and neo-Nazis for the conflict, rang hollow for many. The reality of economic hardship and mounting casualties hit too close to home. The internet, though heavily censored, became a breeding ground for anti-war sentiment. Telegram channels filled with grim images from the front lines and reports of government corruption gained massive followings. The Kremlin's attempts to control the narrative were faltering. The people were starting to see the truth. Putin's promise of economic stability lay in shambles. Western sanctions, initially dismissed as inconsequential, had bitten deep into the Russian economy. The ruble, once a symbol of Russian strength, had plummeted in value. Inflation soared, making basic necessities unaffordable for ordinary Russians. Supermarket shelves, once overflowing with imported goods, stood bare. Long queues for basic necessities became a common sight. The economic prosperity of the early Putin years, built on oil and gas revenues, felt like a distant memory. The Kremlin's attempts to shift blame to the West and internal enemies fell on deaf ears. People felt the pinch in their daily lives, and no amount of propaganda could mask their suffering. The economic reality fueled the growing discontent, turning whispers of dissent into a chorus of anger. Section 4. From grumbling to uprising, the seeds of rebellion. The discontent simmering beneath the surface erupted in sporadic but significant protests. Mothers who had lost their sons in the senseless war took to the streets, their grief transforming into fury. They demanded answers, accountability, and an end to the bloodshed. The Cargo 200 movement, named after the military code for soldiers killed in action, gained momentum. Parents, wives, and children, united by their shared loss, organized rallies and online campaigns demanding the return of their loved ones. These protests, though often dispersed by riot police, were a testament to the growing discontent within Russia. The Kremlin's attempts to silence dissent through intimidation and censorship were failing. The seeds of rebellion sown by economic hardship and the horrors of war were beginning to sprout. Section 5. Blood and bone, the price of aggression. The true cost of Putin's imperial ambitions was measured in blood and bone. The relentless pursuit of territorial expansion came at a staggering human cost, one that could not be ignored. The Russian military, once touted as a formidable force, was bleeding men and resources at an alarming rate. The toll on the soldiers was immense, with many questioning the purpose of their sacrifice. The official casualty figures, heavily massaged by the Kremlin, couldn't hide the truth. The reality on the ground was far grimmer than the sanitized reports suggested. Independent estimates painted a grim picture. Analysts and journalists, often risking their lives, revealed the true extent of the devastation. Tens of thousands of Russian soldiers lay dead or wounded, victims of a war they barely understood. Hospitals overflowed with the injured and graveyards expanded with each passing day. The much-vaunted Russian military machine was revealed to be riddled with corruption, inefficiency and low morale. Equipment lay abandoned, and soldiers' spirits were crushed. The recruitment drive, launched to replenish the depleted ranks, faced stiff resistance. Young men were reluctant to join a cause that seemed doomed from the start. Young men, unwilling to become cannon fodder in Putin's war, fled the country in droves. The exodus was a silent protest against a conflict they wanted no part of. The Kremlin's promises of glory and financial rewards rang hollow in the face of death and destruction. The stark reality was a nation grappling with the heavy price of aggression. Section 6. Control through fear, the iron fist tightens. Faced with mounting challenges, the Kremlin resorted to its old playbook: repression. Independent media outlets already operating under severe constraints were shut down. Journalists and activists who dared to speak out were arrested, intimidated, or disappeared. The internet, once a haven for free expression, was brought under even tighter control. Censorship reached new heights, with any mention of the war or criticism of the government swiftly scrubbed from the digital sphere. The Kremlin's message was clear: dissent would not be tolerated. But the more the regime tightened its grip, the more resistance it encountered. Fear, once an effective tool of control, was losing its potency. The people pushed to the brink were no longer afraid to raise their voices. Section 7. A legacy tarnished, Putin's empire on the brink. Putin's dream of a resurgent Russian empire lay in tatters. The grand vision he once held of a powerful and influential Russia now seemed like a distant memory. The war in Ukraine, meant to be a swift and decisive campaign, had become a quagmire, draining Russia's resources and exposing the weaknesses of its system. What was supposed to be a show of strength turned into a prolonged conflict with no clear end in sight. The economic sanctions, social unrest, and military setbacks had taken their toll. The Russian economy was in shambles, with empty store shelves, and a populace growing increasingly restless. Protests erupted across the nation, challenging the once unshakable authority of the Kremlin. Putin, once seen as an infallible leader, was now perceived as a fallible autocrat, clinging to power. His speeches, once filled with confidence, now seemed desperate. The future remained uncertain, with many questioning how long he could maintain his grip on the nation. Would Putin manage to weather the storm, crushing dissent and emerging from the crisis even stronger? Or would the mounting pressures prove too much, leading to a dramatic shift in Russia's political landscape? Or would the cracks in his regime widen, leading to his downfall and a new era for Russia? The nation stood at a crossroads, with its future hanging in the balance. One thing was clear: the events of the past year had irrevocably altered Russia's trajectory. The once predictable path of Putin's rule was now fraught with uncertainty and potential upheaval. Putin's legacy, once seemingly secure, was now tarnished, his empire on the brink. The world watched closely, waiting to see what the next chapter in Russia's history would hold.